How you doing? This is Greg Granger again, and I'm going to do just a little quick 5 or 3 minute video. I figured I might as well do it since I was behind the drum set. I just recorded my Thursday lesson, so figured I might as well do this real quick as well. I'm not sure if I need to read the disclaimer for these little short videos, but I'm going to do it anyway just in case. Okay. If you are under 18, tell your parents you are doing this session. Feel free to ask questions and make comments, but stay safe online by just using your first name. Don't give out your contact details, and I hope you enjoy today's session. So, this is just a quick little 3 to 5 minute thing that I want to go over that we haven't talked about, and that is the dot. Bam, the dot. Any note, and I'm gonna use my skills here. Any note that might have this. See that dot right there? Now, I don't know how many of you know exactly what that dot means or how to count that dot. And I didn't go over it when we talked about the different notes. I didn't go over it when we went down this list right here. The whole notes, the half notes, right? 2 quarter notes make a half note. You have your eighth notes, 2/8 notes make a quarter note. 2/16 notes make 1/8 note. You kind of need to really have a good understanding of that to have an understanding of what that dot means. All right? Okay, cool. So, whenever you see a dot behind a note, the definition for that dot is the dot represents half of the value of the note that precedes it. Or, because I've said this to some of my students and they go, the note that precedes it, I say, yeah, the note that came before it. And they say, oh, okay, yeah, oh, yeah, I see what you mean, the note that preceded it. Got you, okay, yeah, got it. So, half the value of the note that preceded it, or precedes it, or the note that came before it. Me, I like simple terms. It's half the value of the note that came before it. So if a quarter note came and then the dot is behind the quarter note, that dot is half the value of that quarter note. Okay? If there's an eighth note and then the dot came behind that eighth note, that dot is now half the value of that eighth note. And that's the example that I'm going to use to help you get an understanding of how to count the dot. Okay? All right. Again, counting is important, especially in any type of music, but real important with drums. So, we'll come back to this, but I'm going to draw this on this. I'm going to write this on this page here. All right. So, what do we have here? You have one flag or one bar at the top. And I'm even showing you that this is 1 and 2 and, right? So these are eighth notes. 1 and 2 and. What do you have down here? You have 2 bars or 2 flags. So those are 16th notes. And I even have the writing down here 1 E and 2 E and Okay? All right. It's very simple. It looks complicated, but it's very simple. 1 and 2 and 1 E and 2 E and 1 and 2 and 1 E and 2 E and just using my hi hat as the eighth note. 1 E and 2 E and Okay, so 2/16 notes make up 1/8 note. 1 E and then and a. These two make that guy up. So half the value of an eighth note is what? Half the value of an eighth note is 1/16 note or 2/16 notes? Exactly, 1/16 note. 2/16 notes make up the whole eighth note. 1/16 note is half the value. So that's half of that eighth note. Got you? So, if I do this, I'm going to hold it up for you in a minute. Hold on. Do that guy right there. And put a dot right there. Now, we're only looking at this bit right here. If I do that, in essence, what I just did was, we have an eighth note. That's an eighth note. Eighth note right here. And then that dot is a 16th note. But just one, because it is half the value of that eighth note. So, in essence, that is this. And you can count it like that. It's okay to count it out loud. It's like, I don't know if I told you this before, but learning how to read music, and I'll say drum music, it's like learning how to read. You have to sound words out, right? WAS, was. You had to go, the W makes the what. And it took time, but you would have to sound it out. The, 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 the. Eventually, when you saw WAS, you knew, oh, that's was. So if you saw THE, you knew that was the. Same thing with this. It's okay if you have to count this. You know that this eighth note is 2/16 notes. 16th note is counted 1 E and a. Right? So this one note, the eighth followed by 6 by a dot is 1 E and. That's just 1 E and. It's all three of these. Two of these make up that 1/8 note. Bam. That dot is half the value of an eighth note, which is 1/16 note. 1 E and. And to complete this phrase, I'm going to make that last note a 16th note because it has two flags there. So that would be the Okay? 1 E and 1 E and And it's the same thing here. Two E and Make sure that doesn't fall. Right? 1 E and 2 E and Now, if that's in time, it will sound like this. 1 E and 2 E and 1 E and 2 E and That's because of that dot. Eighth notes. 1. Let's do the bass drum. Okay. 1 and 2 and. Eighth notes. 16th notes. 1 E and 2 E and Dotted eighth followed by a 16th note. 1 E and 2 E and right? 1 E and 2 E and 1 and 2 and 1 E and 2 E and dotted eighth That's how that dot works. You got it? Now, it would be the same thing if that was a quarter note. If that was a quarter note, then you'd have the quarter note, and then you'd have half the value, which would be an eighth note. So practice that. We'll talk about that again later on with another refresher. The dot is half the value of the note that precedes it, or the half the value of the note that comes before it. Learn this. Get a real good understanding of this, and you'll be able to count that dot anytime. Okay, have a good one. See you.